You know that there's so many incredibly powerful synth and plugins out there, but did you know that actually Ableton has some of the best already programmed in it, like the wavetable synth or the echo plugin? And in this video we want to look at peak time sounds, Bass 92 and all that, how they make their bass sounds and how you can do them with Ableton instruments only. Let's go! So the Ableton synth and plugins and all that sometimes feel a little underrated. People often tend to get all different sorts of external plugins and synthesizers and all that, and there's very good tools out there, don't get me wrong. But the Ableton stuff is actually so powerful. There are so many plugins like Saturator, Echo, the hybrid reverb, for example. We made a video on that. You can check this out afterwards. They are so incredible. And also there's some good synth actually here that you can really do a lot with, like wavetable, analog sounding very good. And you have a bunch of presets, and while not all of them might be good for any genre, right? You have like a lot of piano keys, for example. Maybe you don't need them for techno. Or you have like, different sorts of wavetables, but not all of them might fit your style. This is where we come in, of course, and we can deliver you all the presets for Ableton stuff that you need to make your peak time techno sound, in this case today. So we're gonna have a look at our new template, which is available in our shop. And let me play it for you from here. So we want to talk about those three tracks in particular today. Those are those different types of bass steps, the infamous FM step that you heard before, but there's also some different kind of stuff going on here. And while there's a lot of synths that you can do this very well with, a lot of people don't know that it's actually possible in the same way to do it in Ableton, right? So let me show you how it's done. We have a wavetable, we have an analog, and we have another wavetable. And of course, have in mind that oftentimes Ableton instruments tend to have less CPU. You don't have to open a window for it, right? There's also some very good arguments to be done to use Ableton instruments. So first of all, maybe pattern fairly simple. We are in B minor here, and we only use the B in every of those tracks, except for here we have a little variation to C and A, right? But in general, we want to talk about the sound design today. And we can start actually with those two steps before we come to the lead bass. But let me tell you, all those three tracks, right? All those instrument racks, including all the effects, not only the synth, are available as a free download for you. And if you like them, check out the template. You will get much more presets, like melodic presets. You will get additional serum presets also that you can use instead of the Ableton if you want to. You get all this template, right? You get all the kick and hi-hats and everything. So there's a lot to explore here, but we're gonna start now with the bass steps made with Ableton instruments. So we can start with this one, step 1. And it's an easy one that's going through the whole track, basically. That's the break. We don't use it in the break. But it's basically playing from the whole track. You can even hear in the very beginning. There it is. And when we talk about this one now, we have to have one thing in mind. It's not always the most complicated sound design that gets you the best results. Actually, sometimes it's good to have just an easy but well done sound and then apply the right effects, the right kind of textures and dimension to it to make it shine in the track. And for this sound, what I wanted is I don't want it to be a main character. I want it to be kind of in the back, kind of adding to the groove rather than just being like very strong and very aggressive. So you can already hear that it has a lot of echo and some kind of reverb. And yeah, so first of all, maybe let's disable all of this, all the effects, and let's just have a listen to the sound. Very easy. There's also another reverb on here. Go like this. That's it. I mean, as easy as it can get. So what we have is one saw wave, right? In analog we have two oscillators. We're only using one. This saw wave here, we could change it like this, but we want to use the saw -1 octave. But that's just for you to know that you want to play lower octaves rather than higher octaves with this sound. So don't worry about that. And then the magic is happening in the filter, of course. If we play without the filter, this is what we get. And now we apply the filter, and we can kind of take the higher frequencies out. And then one thing about the Ableton instruments that's a little kind of tedious is that you have to know where everything is. So this is why you're watching the video, hopefully. So I can show you, for example, the envelope for the frequency. So an envelope that opens the cutoff on your filter is right here. It's no fancy mapping like Zeroom. You don't drag or drop it somewhere. It's right there. It's already pre-mapped kind of, because they know this is what you want to use. You want to use an envelope on the filter. And it is its own envelope, right? There's another envelope on the oscillator amp, which is right here. And then for the filter, you have a separate envelope. It's only for the filter. And it's right here. So if I lower this all the way down, we don't get any opening of the cutoff. Like this, we get more opening, and we could even go to the maximum, which kind of feels like it's not even an envelope, but it's just open. So we have to find kind of a sweet spot to get the kind of sonic texture that we want. We want it to be low. We don't want to have too many high frequencies, maybe only just a little bit on the plug, but then it should have some kind of mid-rangey feeling, which is also why later on we will add some effects to do that. But for now, just a little bit of envelope, a little bit of resonance also, because without it kind of feels weak. Adding this adds just a little bit of acid character to it, because of course you know that the acid sound is characterized by just a frequency with high resonance to get this kind of acid sound. So we have it like this, and that's the envelope shape. We can play around with this, of course. Also, if you're using longer notes, for example, you could change the shape. Let's just do something so you see what I mean. You could maybe add a little bit of attack, more decay. And then we would have something like this, for example. Right? So let's go all the way back. And maybe have a look at the effect. So we have the EQ8, and what I'm doing here is two things. First of all, cutting the low frequencies, and I cut very high at 150 because there's a lot going on in the bass, and I don't want it to get in the way of the bass. It should layer on top of the bass. Look how many frequencies we have down there, taking them all away. And then here with the bell curve, I'm just emphasizing a frequency range that I really want to emphasize in this in this sound, and it's around 600 Hertz. I wanted to have this kind of woody, knocky sound, and it's kind of a, you can imagine it like Tetris, right? We have the bass line, which is sitting very low. Let's say it's a big Tetris piece on the left, and then we have this one, for example, which has a lot of high frequencies and is also very big. So it's a big Tetris piece, but rather in the mids and on the right of your Tetris game. And now we want to have those little steps, and we want to fit them between those two. So it wouldn't make sense to have this one with a lot of bass or a lot of high frequencies. So rather I focus it somewhere where there's enough space, which for me this time is in the mids, around like 600, so it can really go through all the other sounds. And now we have this big audio effect right here, and it also works together with the OTT. So basically we have two echoes. We can listen to each of them. The first one is this 16th echo. So it's just like a quick response kind of. And the other one is this kind of 8th echo, which is much longer and it's also ping-ponged. And the OTT, only 30% without lows also, but it's there to kind of boost up the echo. Now you can hear how much longer, it's better, it's more audible. and both echoes together, they make this kind of nice combination. And you can see that I have the echoes on the same volume as the original sound, because in this specific case, the echoes are, for me, completely part of the sound. They're not a mixing thing, they're not there to add some dimension, but they are rather part of the sound and the groove, which is why they have kind of the same volume, right? And also lastly, adding this reverb here, which I disabled for now, but now it's back, to get some spring reverb texture. You can see this one here, spring, awesome stereo spring, and it also has this vintage algorithm which just adds a little bit of noise, kind of bit reduced noise onto it. And there's the sound, right? We also have it sidechained to the kick, so all the echoes are kind of bouncing with the kick. And next up we have this step 2, which is much stronger already, but not as strong as the lead bass. You can see they are kind of a call and response structure, and we can check on this one. For this one, I've used a wavetable this time, because I didn't want to have the most common standard saw wave sound, but rather something, like you can see already, a little more weird, a little more textured in the higher frequencies. And once again, let's disable the effects. Like this. Back there, there's only the sidechain, we can keep it. So this is what it sounds like. And the most important thing from the very beginning is we have 2 hits, but the first one is so low in velocity, and the velocity, as you can see here, is mapped to both the cutoff and the volume of the sound, the amplitude, which means that the low velocity hit is not really audible. It's more like a little hiccup before the sound. But it does a lot of difference actually. Because like this, it's only bow. But we want this down. If we raise the velocity though, we get dudung. But we don't want dudung, we want dung. And yeah, instead of making the sounds myself, let's rather have a look at wavetable now. We have 2 layers here. If we listen to, actually 3, because the sub is also enabled. We have this one, which is doing the most kind of. We have this one as a little support layer. And a little bit of sub bass also to make it just more powerful. We cut the bass in the end, but you always have to imagine if you have a sub bass, which is a saw or a square, not a sine, right? It has also higher frequencies. Then if you add it to your sound and then cut the low frequencies away, you still have a different high frequency content than if it wasn't there, right? So this is why we use this combination. And what we are using on this one is synced sines, which is a wavetable of sine waves that got synced. So synced means that you kind of double the frequency range, or maybe quadruple it, or even more, and therefore we get more overtones. So if we disable the warping here, this is very synced, not synced at all. Wavetable is just so visually appealing, especially in this view. But now let's go all the way back. What we added here is frequency modulation, and that's what I said in the beginning, the infamous FM steps, very known in peak time techno. And we have a tune 100% amount of 27. If we add a little more, it gets too metallic. We still want it to have a lot of body. And in combination with the other one, we just get a little more body. It doesn't change much in the higher frequencies, but it adds in the mids and low mids this kind of, it's more like a pulse wave modulated kind of sound. But there's a lot of wavetables that you can choose from, different folders here, and then in each of those folders you have different wavetables. So there's a lot to explore, and you can definitely have a lot of fun with it. So next up, if we add the sub oscillator, we go here, and now we only have to talk about maybe the envelope here. That's all the mapping that's happening we have the PRD mode on the 24 dB filter. We add a lot of drive. Without the drive, it wouldn't be so powerful. We would have to add saturation and all that later, but we go for it in the filter because, as I always say, distortion plus filtering is just a match made in heaven. You take away something, you add a little bit through the distortion, and in the meantime, the sound becomes stronger. So it's the perfect combination also for this sound. And now if we look at the FX, we have this overdrive here, and this is and this is a very common technique to emphasize a certain frequency range through a distortion tool. Overdrive has this nice option of filtering, right? So if we go to 100%, we only have this frequency range here around 2000, but we only mix it in. So our sound becomes just a little more focused on this area and also a little bit more, let's say, like a little more rough. The higher frequencies just get distorted and therefore it feels a little rougher. And after this, it's finally time to cut the low frequencies as well. Also, again, this time already at 200 Hertz. So once again, Tetris piece should fit in. Those two we don't really have to mix because they come after each other, right? But we have to mix it with the bassline, right? So we don't want it to go in the way of the bassline. And once again, I'm emphasizing a little bit around the 500, 600, 700 Hertz area. This time not so much because it's just a different type of sound. But yeah, you can see it's kind of the same method that we did here, just executed a little differently because the sound is a little different. And a little saturator in the end. So now you can hear the difference. That's forming the Tetris piece to fit where it belongs. And lastly, I've added a reverb here. I didn't use this one because I wanted another one. Here we have this kind of spring reverb, but for this sound, I wanted this more like bigger room, so I used this algorithm Quartz and with a kind of bigger size here to make it feel very explosive, the reverb. And this is the step number 2. So finally, let's talk about the lead bass. And the lead bass is actually also fairly simple. We have, once again, the combination of 3 oscillators in wavetable. And you can see we kind of have the same effects as well. Overdrive, saturator, EQ, and this time it's echo instead of reverb, but kind of the same. Let's disable this all. Here it doesn't make such a huge difference because remember I said step 1 and 2, they are very tiny Tetris pieces that we want to fit in, while this lead bass is a bigger Tetris piece that's kind of taking more space because it's kind of a main character. So we don't have to shape away too much, but rather make it very powerful. So if we listen to the oscillators, oscillator 1 through the warping loses a lot of the low frequencies. That would be just a normal saw wave, and then with the modern and a lot of warp, it kind of feels also like a pulse wave modulation, like a very thin but also edgy sound in the high frequencies. Also we have the same thing, by the way, on the filter here, also with an envelope, 2 envelopes actually. The third one here is very short and on the pitch to just give it a little knock, and the second one is longer with 1 second on the filter. The second oscillator, kind of similar to step 2, is this kind of pulse width modulated sound here. It adds body and also a certain type of kind of strong and more, let's say, powerful feeling in the higher frequencies. And lastly, same thing in the sub to just add a little bit more power, which we are taking away later from the sub frequencies, of course, but it keeps the power in the higher frequencies and in the mids, right? So with those 3, exactly same thing as last time. This time not so much overdrive, just a little bit, and also a little bit more in the mids. Saturator basically doing the same, and EQ8 we don't boost anything because the sound is already fine, but we take away the bass. This time a little lower because we want the sound to have more body and be more powerful, right? Also we have the echo. Very short 8th note echo, we don't want it to be too long because it would feel very atmospheric, but we rather want something that's short and snappy and powerful. Also notice how much I'm taking away from all different sides in this echo, so it feels very, very thin in comparison to the original sound. So it doesn't take away the power of the original sound, but it just adds a little bit of dimension. This is a dimension echo. You can also see it's at -10 in comparison to on step 1. We had 2 echoes at the same volume. This was more of a sound design groove echo. This one is just for dimension, just adding this little bit of room response. And of course we also have the reverb on the lead bass to complete it all. And that's all the 3 sounds. You can get them for free. And if you like this template, I'm going to show you the main drop. If you like it, check it out up here. So have a lot of fun with your sounds that you can download for free. Those 3 Ableton instruments. I hope this was a helpful insight and it also opened your mind to all the Ableton instruments, which are actually very good. And yeah, have a good time and keep making music.